Well, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, no matter where you are in the world. Bishop Greg Gill coming to you live from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And so glad that you've joined us today for this special edition broadcast of Ignite Your Destiny, our 12 days of Christmas. This is day number 4. And as you know, this week we've been focusing in on orphans in Ukraine and making a difference there. And our guest today is none other than Ed Dixon, who comes originally from Chatham, Ontario. And he's going to be with us. He leads this ministry called Loads of Love and has been working in Ukraine for close to or over 25 years and done a great job. I've been working with Ed since 2006. I've been to Ukraine 13 times, and not every time have I been with him, but he set it up most of the time. And he's got a fruitful ministry there, and God's using him very powerfully. So I'm going to bring him on today. We're going to get going, share the broadcast, get it out there, and we're going to make a difference today. So thank you. Hi, Ed. How you doing?
Hey.
Good to see you.
Hey, great to be here, Greg.
Adventure, we call it when we go with you. And it's always an adventure when we go to Ukraine. Some people call it the Ukraine, but we go to Ukraine, right? It's Ukraine.
That's right.
And so you've been over there. Tell us a little bit about your story before we talk about McJoyful Christmas, just so people can get to know you. And great to have you on today. Please share the broadcast, people. Get it out there.
Thank you, Greg. I was born in Leamington, Ontario, and been in Ukraine now for 27 years.
Wow, 27.
Yeah, and I got radically saved at the age of 32. Happened to run into a guy on a golf course who invited me to a baseball game. I went to the baseball game. It turned out the entire baseball team was from church in Chatham, Ontario, and I often say I was set up right there. Met these guys, just fantastic guys. I'll never forget. We went to a restaurant after the first baseball game. I played with them, and the waitress came in and asked if anybody wanted something to drink. Went all the way around the table, and not one guy ordered any alcohol. And I remember turning to the guy beside me and I said, "Am I ever glad she didn't ask me first?" Because I had a horrible problem with alcohol at the time. And anyway, obviously a light went on that not so much just the alcohol, of course, but these guys had something that I didn't have. And I started to go to their church, ended up attending there for about 8 months, going in every Sunday, still kind of living my life during the week. And then one morning I was sitting in the service, and a lady started to speak out in tongues in the service. And I was raised, my parents were Mennonites, so kind of like always thought, what in the world is that? And then another lady nearby me translated what was being said, interpreted, and basically said, "I love you, my child." And I realized that God was talking directly to me. And before I could even compose myself, she said it again, "I love you, my child." And by that time I had my hand over my face, because men don't cry, and I'm tears are rolling down my face in the back row there. And she said it a third time, "I love you, my child." And I think, Greg, all my life, I thought if there is a God, he probably doesn't like me very much. If he knows what I'm really like deep down, through and through.
Wow.
And that day I realized that that's not God. God is completely different, just loves us with everything and all more than we can ever imagine. And I decided to give my life to him. I thought, I've been kind of trying to run my own life all my life, trying to do what I thought was right, and wasn't getting me anywhere. So I thought, well, what if we did an experiment and we just did whatever God told us to do every day and every moment, and where would it lead us? And it's led me to some pretty wild places. and that, the places only God can lead us to.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you've seen a lot in your 28 years there, haven't you? Now, currently, you're basing out of Canada. Of course, you came home before the war, right?
Yeah,
But family to Canada.
we just happened to come back on a furlough, 1 year furlough. We don't do that very often. We happened to do that because our daughter Amy was starting university, and so we wanted to be with her for a year. And while we were here, suddenly the war broke out, and I was, I wanted to leave right away. Like I was getting ready to just go back, and my board, thank God for having wise people around you. They said, Ed, probably you can do more here right now than you could do there, and so I began, orchestrating the relief to Ukraine. A lot of different organizations started working through us because, as you know, Greg, we have people that we can trust right there in Ukraine that, we would trust with our lives.
Boots on the ground, yeah.
Yeah, and having
worked with them for years.
Yeah, having people that you can trust in Ukraine is a big deal. Yeah. And so it was big for us, and we were able to evacuate over 5,000 people from war zones. To date, we've delivered groceries to over 200,000 families now in dangerous areas.
Now, when you evacuate them, where did you take them? Poland or?
Well, basically,
where'd they go?
Most of them were taken out of bomb shelters in those areas that were occupied. And they were taken then most of them were taken to the train stations, either in Zaporozhye, Dnipro, Poltava. And then from there, they would go on their own to wherever they were going. But many of them stayed in those areas as well.
Okay.
Stayed in the churches. Vadim still has people living in his church. He had up to 170 people at a time, like every night, coming in and staying there. So they and really people went everywhere. There was no it's not sort of like one place where they kind of went. They just and then they many of them went on to Poland, where we have Sveta, who works there with us.
In August.
In Warsaw, and just phenomenal life center there. Greg Swinimer's kind of running that, and getting help to people. Poland, Romania, Holland, Germany. The Ukrainians have gone all over Europe and Canada as well. Yeah, of course. We helped settle 200 families here in Canada as well.
Wow. Amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, there's been no shortage of work, has there, Ed?
Yeah.
I mean, this probably increased your load by who knows how much.
Yeah. And for the first 3 months, of course, as you know, were just insane. And every once in a while, I would look down at my body and I would be like, am I all right? Can you actually go at this pace for months on end and not have some sort of, but God's grace, I guess, I just kept going and going, and it was amazing, like how the day went. I would have the mornings, they'd be super Ukrainian mornings, because all the guys in Ukraine, it's already evening, when like noon is like 7 in the evening there. And then, so I'd be going right from 5 in the morning and then in the afternoon up until 6, I'd still be getting calls from people in Canada. But, then in the evening, most Canadians would kind of be settling down. The Ukrainians are sleeping. So I'd have some time in the evening to gather myself. But then by, of course, 8, 9 in the evening, I'd be wiped out. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and that went on for like every single day, almost 24 hours a day for the first 3 months.
Now, while you were over there, you met your wife. Tell us a little bit about that story.
Yeah, when I went to Ukraine, I was a single guy. Man, I just, when I gave my life to Christ, I just really committed to that. I remember once, Greg, I was in an apartment in Kriva Rog, and I was praying, and I had this sense that the Holy Spirit walked right into the room and just sat down with me, started talking to me. And I was like, I knew I could ask him anything about anything.
Yeah.
So I asked him a bunch of different things, as you would. But then the one thing I said was, I'm willing to stay single for the rest of my life. Like, I will just serve you. You know that. But I need to know, like, I need you to tell me that that's what you want me to do. And he said, no, there is someone for you. And I was like, oh, really? And then my next question was, can you tell me who that is?
Yeah, of course.
And he said, no, because that wouldn't be interesting. And I thought, I mean, sometimes the Holy Spirit says things to you and it takes you a while to figure it out,
Yeah.
And it took me I was thinking about that. Like, how could that not be interesting? And then I realized after a while, Greg, God could tell us our future. He knows, right? But the thing is, if he did, then we'd just be going through the motions.
Yeah.
And God wants our lives to be this amazing adventure. And I say all that just to lead into the fact that meeting my wife after 7 years in Ukraine was just one of the greatest adventures I've ever had. And she just came in serving a meal at a missionary place. And I'm looking at this girl serving this meal and I recognize, and then I said, I've seen you when you see someone and you think, I've seen you somewhere. I know you from somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she's looking at me and then she says, well, I'm the worship leader at Pastor Sunday at Elijah's church when it was in like the heyday of 12,000 people or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh yeah, that's where I've seen you. So we talked for a while and then just, didn't really see her much after that. And but 3 months later, I was praying in an apartment in Tashkent in Uzbekistan, and just praying one night. I'm laying on the floor, I'm crying, I'm like just having this time with God that evening. And right at the end of my prayer session, all of a sudden I saw my wife. I saw Natasha. She wasn't my wife, of course, at that time, but I just saw her, and I was like, Lord, are you telling me? Wait a second, like seriously? And then I said, Lord, you're going to have to give me some kind of confirmation here. And I happened to be reading my Bible. I don't know the exact verse, but where I was reading right at that time, I picked it up and I looked, and sure enough, God gave me a confirmation that. And then I had to go talk to her. And like, of course, she knew nothing about it. And I remember going to her apartment and I go into her apartment. And she agreed to meet with me, and she was wondering why I wanted to meet with her. I get there and I'm kind of like, so nice weather today. Eh? And, and so are you busy these days? Like just going nowhere. Finally, I got down on one knee. I walked across the room. I said, listen, I just need to tell you what God spoke to me when I was praying. And I laid it all out there. And she says, are you asking me to marry you? And I said, no. I said, you're a believer too, right? And so if God speaks something to me, he can also speak something to you. It's not like not like God only speaks to me.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I said, all I'm asking is for you to just pray about it. And if God did truly speak to me, then like we'll know that because he'll speak to you too. And so I went to Canada. I was away for 3 weeks in Canada. I came back to Ukraine. I'd been 3 weeks in Canada, hadn't seen her. And I came back. I had to go right to her apartment from the airport. I didn't even know if she was home. I went to her apartment, knocked on the door of her apartment. The door opens up. There she's standing there. She just looks at me. She says, yes, in English. and just like that, we were engaged. And yeah, and then we went out on our first date after we got engaged.
After you were engaged.
Yeah, which I don't recommend to people, but it worked for us. Yeah.
I say sometimes, Ed, we just don't know this move of God.
Yeah. And she's a amazing bombshell of a Ukrainian beauty, and I married way out of my league, and she's such a blessing. Yeah. We have four daughters now.
Yeah, just like me, 4 daughters.
Yeah.
4 daughters.
That's a sign of blessing,
Yeah, Philip had 4 daughters that prophesied in the Bible. So wow, it's incredible. So right now you're based out of Barrie, right?
Yeah, so I spending almost half my time in Ukraine and half my time here now.
Yeah. And you just got back from Ukraine just
Just came back.
this week.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
I had a great
what
trip.
were you doing on this trip?
So we were all over. We were basically went right across the country with Bob Jones, who's from Edmonton, and Pastor Bob. And I just met him when we went on the trip, and he was phenomenal to travel with. Great guy, just a huge blessing. You know, when you know that, like when you travel a lot, the people that you travel with are just so important, and you know, just their attitudes, the way you get along, everything. So Bob and I were just like two peas in a pod, and he had very practical advice for all the pastors that we're working with. And yeah, just we were in Poltava with Pastor Vadim. We were in Dnipro with Yuri and Pasha. We were in Kriva Rog with Sasha, Lida. A lot of the different. We had 60 pastors at the meeting in Kriva Rog. We were in Kropivnitsky, which is Kirovograd, with Pastor Alexei, who, and so altogether, the churches we're working with have planted 25 new churches since the war began.
During the war.
Yeah, just since the war began. Yeah,
amazing. Yeah,
yeah. I'm
and Vadim, you said in Poltava they've doubled.
Yeah, like their church.
Plus they planted 7 churches, right?
Yeah, their church is at least double of what it was before. 7 new churches. Just phenomenal move of God going on. I think, you know, to put it in perspective, you got to understand, and I know you know this, Greg, from the times you've come over, but the average person in Ukraine for a long time was basically Orthodox Christian by birth, and they had limited knowledge of what you know, a true believer was, what a Protestant Christian was. So if I told someone in Ukraine before that I was a Protestant Christian, that's a little bit like me saying to you that I was Jehovah's Witness or something. You know, like it's a little bit of the, you know, oh, okay, you know, and they would just kind of step back a little bit. And now it's completely changed. Everyone in Ukraine, if you say to them that you're a Protestant Christian, very much their reaction would be, tell me what that is. I want to know what that really is. You know, tell me, you know, the differences, or they'll begin to talk to you about it. It just opens up all kinds of amazing opportunities. And I would say, you know, just to give you an example, we were south of Kropivnitsky there with Pastor Alexei, and they had a lady who's the mayor of 7 towns. So that would be towns that are about 5,000, average 5,000 people in size. So 7 towns, she's mayor of those 7 towns. They have their headquarters in this one town called Ivanovka. And we were with her. She got radically saved just a while ago at one of Pastor Alexei's churches. Wow. And now every single person in her office that works with her is a born-again Christian. Wow. And like, I mean, there's literally a move of God just
breaking out right there.
Oh, and then I'm with her, and she's introducing me to all the people in her office who are Christians. And then they tell me they have like one of the offices in their city hall is an office for children's ministry, particularly so when any children come in, they can get children's literature. They've got children's Bibles there. They've got stuff from Samaritan's Purse that they got a hold of there, all kinds of stuff. And they have a lady who's now a born-again Christian who's leading this ministry right in the city hall. And I just, you know, like seeing that. So when she's talking to me, this is what really got me. She's talking to me and she says, Ed, we had a meeting a while ago, you know, with our city council, and we allow different members of the community to come in to talk to us, or if they have grievances, we just sit there and we wait for them, and they come in, and sure enough, the Russian Orthodox priest walks into the meeting, and we are not like against them at all. In fact, there's some very good Christians within the Orthodox and everything, but he comes in there, she said, and he says to them, why have you sold your souls to the Western cult? Like he's just blasting them. And they're sitting there listening to him. And then she said one of her members, board members, stands up, walks over, city council member. He walks over and he says to the priest, he says, excuse me, is that you guys that are giving us all the groceries for the refugee families?
Wow.
And he says, no, what do you mean? He said, is that you that gave the wood for the refugees at the center? And he's just quiet. Is that you that gave the wheelchairs and the medicine that we needed? And then he says to the priest, he says, we're beginning to wonder who the real believers are and how we can tell who real believers are.
Yeah.
And that right there in a nutshell, like when she told me that, just again, nothing against the Orthodox Church and, Christians and that, but in a nutshell gives you an idea of what the average Ukrainian right now is thinking and what love, like just genuine love, about 85% of the aid that has come to Ukrainians across the country since the world started has come from the church.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. 85% from the church.
Yeah. That's so good.
So there's the reason for the revival right
and
there.
That's good because a lot of people say, well, the church isn't doing anything. The church isn't doing it. Well, you're boots on the ground. You're seeing the church do something.
Absolutely. The church is doing everything in Ukraine right now when it comes to aid.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
A couple times when I've been there, we've been to some different places. We went to Dnipropetrovsk to the place where was it a hospital or the
orphanage?
What do you call it? The place?
Yeah, the people around there used to call it the place that God forgot.
Tell us about that place in Dnipro.
So when we first went there, we had a guy came over on a trip, Canadian guy. He had brought a suitcase full of toys, and we were like, "What are the toys for?" And he said, I brought these toys for the orphan kids. And we were like, there's orphan kids here. Because I had just, I hadn't been in Ukraine that long. And I just knew God had called me to go there. And so I said to the pastor of the local church, is there an orphanage around here where we could take these toys? So he took us to this place. We drove all across town, middle of the night, down these alleys. And we get to this place, finally got permission to go in. We took the toys in. It was just like we were not prepared for what we were about to see when we walked in. Like kids, no arms, no legs. Some kids, just really deformed and crawling around on dirty floors. And I was raised in agriculture, and this was worse than many things I had seen with animals.
Yeah, for sure.
And there was one room, there were 19 kids in this one room in their cribs, and they had never been taken out of their cribs in their lives.
Jesus.
And there was, one girl in there who was 18 years old or so, and just curled up. And, I struggled as anyone would, I struggled big time. And the big thing for me that day was, okay, my life's been changed by God. I mean, at this point, he had completely radically changed my life.
Yeah.
And he had given me a purpose and an adventure in my life that I never dreamed. And here I walk into this place and I'm like, okay, God, like, what did these kids do wrong before they were born?
Yeah. What did you deserve this, right? Yeah.
Like, and not only to be in such a horrible place, not only to be like deformed and physically disabled, but to be abandoned by their parents as well,
Yeah.
And I just didn't understand. I remember we had given out the toys. I was walking out, and one of the kids comes up to me on a little cart with wheels on it, and he comes, because he didn't have legs, he could just move with his arms, and he comes over and he's handing me his toy that I had given him. And I said to the translator, Victor, I said, what is he saying? I don't understand what he's saying. Why is he giving me the toy back? And Victor says he wants to thank you for coming to see him, and he has nothing else to give you. And I was just like, man, you could have picked me up off the floor at that point. And I just walked outside, and I remember just standing outside for a long time. you know, just looking up, and I describe it like a giant teardrop, Greg, fell
Yeah.
from heaven that day and hit me right on the head. And I realized something that has revolutionized my life ever since then. And that is that God loves those kids
Yeah.
more than we could ever imagine. And he needs us. Just think about that. God needs us to be his hands and feet,
Yeah.
to go to those places. And I realized, that God was actually, he had done this tapestry of events. When I told him that I would do whatever he wanted to do instead of what I wanted to do, he made all this happen so that I would see that place. And and that was quite a revelation. Just so I made a commitment, obviously, right there and then. I said, that's it. We're going to do whatever we have to do to change this place. And
Well,
that place,
I remember one day that you and I were there. This two kids, a guy, a little boy, and a little girl, just flew out of that door, and you couldn't believe it because you had just paid for an operation for him to get legs, I believe it was.
yeah, to
And
fix his legs, yeah,
and
yeah,
and same with her. She had new limbs or something. I can't remember exactly.
yeah. She had her feet. The one girl I think we saw that day, her feet had been on backwards, and they had turned them around.
Right. And so I mean, I remember it, and you just saw him, and it was like a moment we can't even describe. I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah.
And it was like you looked at me and said, "Look, $1,000 changed this life. That's the kid's life.
Yeah.
$1,000 changes life forever.
Change their lives forever. Not not just a little bit, but genuinely. And that's, I think, those kids at that time, they were my kids, right? And maybe in some cases, I was the only dad they had. And I remember meeting with the doctor before the whole operation thing started. And I'm talking to the doctor about this one girl, and she said, the doctor says, well, if she had those operations, she'd be able to walk. And I'm like, what do you mean if she had the operations? He says, yeah, if she had the surgeries she needs, she could walk. I said, well, why doesn't she have the surgeries? And he says, well, he's looking at me like I have two heads. Like, how could I not? Like, well, because she doesn't have parents.
Oh, yeah. Oh, well.
And I'm like, well, what does it matter if she doesn't have parents? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Why does she need parents to get operated? He says, well, again, looking at me like I'm some idiot Canadian, he says, well, who's going to pay for it? Like, if she doesn't have parents, nobody's going to pay for it. I'm like, oh my goodness. You mean the only reason she's not getting the operation done is because nobody will pay for it?
Yeah, right.
Oh man. And like, I can't remember the first girl. I think we ended up spending about $1,200, and she's walking. That girl Tanya was actually with me in Montreal later and spoke to a whole crowd of people in Montreal about how God had changed her life, and it was like an outpouring after that, and ended up across Ukraine. We've helped over 400 children now with real life-changing operations. And some of the kids, different varying degrees of success. But one of the boys was great, like Anton. He was
just going to ask him.
We did some surgeries on him to try to, see if, because his arms and legs were kind of like frozen.
Yeah.
And so we did some surgeries for him, trying to get his flexibility. And the doctor said, well, probably if he was swimming, like that might help. Oh, okay. So we took him to a pool, and he just took off in the water, like and now he says that when he's in the water, he feels like he's free. Like he feels more at home in the water than he does on land, right? Because he can move anywhere, he can go anywhere. Well, obviously, the rest of the story is Anton has won, I think it's 6 now medals at the Paralympic Games in Rio de Janeiro,
Ukraine,
Tokyo. He's probably going to win 2 gold medals. That's what they're predicting in Paris coming up.
Yep.
Just an amazing story. And
The thing is, Ed, you and I were at the wedding.
yeah,
Remember, I was at the wedding with you.
Yeah.
Wedding,
And so, you know, interesting thing there is that when he tells his life story, very often he tells this story about these Canadians who came to his orphanage, and he says they did some operations for him, and then he says they took me to a swimming pool and they threw me in to see if I could swim.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And I'm like, Anton, we did not throw you, you know.
Little did you know you were raising up a gold medalist for Ukraine.
Yeah.
Paralympics.
Yeah, we had no idea. No, absolutely no idea.
I mean, Ed and I were at their wedding in Drosk, and two of them, both in wheelchairs, getting married.
Yeah.
And it was a beautiful wedding that Ed raised the money for and put it on. And we were in the most beautiful place. It was not like poverty. It was beautiful. It was a beautiful reception. Everything was done with excellence. And their lives were changed that day just because Ed said, I'm going to help poor India.
Yeah.
And see, that's what he's done for over 28 years. That's what he's been doing as he's been in Ukraine. A couple other things I want to touch just before McJoyful. Tell us about when you had the office of the president's wife and what they asked you to do because they saw what you were doing.
Yeah, so I got contacted that was when Poroshenko was the president,
right?
And his wife, Marina. So I got contacted by the president's office. They said that Marina Poroshenko, the first lady of Ukraine, would like to meet you. Well, usually if you get a call in Ukraine from the government's office, you know, that's maybe not the best thing that could happen. But I thought, well, if it's the first lady, it might be something all right. And so I went, and they had a panel of people who met with me before I could meet with her. And so I'm sitting there and they're asking me questions about who I am, what I do, and different things. And they say, well, we know this about you. We know this about you. And okay. And then the one lady just looks right at me and she says, don't start talking to the first lady about God, you know? And it kind of took me, like I said, well, actually, I didn't come here, you know, to talk to her about God. That's like,
you just came because you requested you come.
I came because she obviously wants to talk to me about our work with children, and you know, and she said, all right. So, and it kind of took me aback. So I get into the meeting and it's just me and her, like just the two of us in her office. And wouldn't you know it, it didn't take very long. And what was she asking about? She was asking me about God, you know, and we were talking about it just turned into an amazing conversation. So one of the things, I'm sitting there talking to her, and I said to her, because I knew she was working with children with special needs, helping to develop the programs like for special education in schools. And I said to her, I said, you know, Marina, you're the wife of the president. Her husband's extremely wealthy. And I said, you could have chosen to do anything, and yet you chose to help children. And so I just want you to know it's really inspiring to me. And she stopped me about halfway through my last sentence, and she says, Ed, it's not us that are inspiring you. You are inspiring us. And you came here. This isn't even your country. These aren't even your children. And you're giving your life to help these children. Like you were inspiring us, like you would. And it was one of those moments, Greg, where, you know, very often we as ministers, missionaries, whatever, you know, we trudge away. We believe that we're making a difference. We believe God is telling us, oh, Ed, you're doing a great job, you know. But you kind of wonder sometimes, are you really having an influence on other people? And when you get the first lady, you know, contacts you and tells you something, like, it was a real sort of moment for me that I'll treasure for a long time, just knowing that everything we do, the ripples of what we do, they get around, you know, those ripples go all across the lake and across the ocean. We have no idea the things that God is doing with every sort of little thing. And so we were able to do some things together with her with regard to special education when we started there. In Canada, about 98% of kids with special needs go to school in some form. And in Ukraine at the time, it was about 2%. So just the complete opposite. And so we made some steps together with her to improve that and get children with special needs into schools in Ukraine.
Now, in Ukraine, most people with special needs or situations like that get abandoned by their family, right? That's why they end up in these orphanages.
Yeah, that's right back to the
Yeah.
back to the Soviet time when they so the Soviet ideal was to have two productive mother and father, both making a reasonable income, living with a healthy family, like just the utopia. They were trying to get, so when there was a disabled child born into this utopian family, it didn't make sense for them. That just completely throws everything off, and we don't know how to deal with that. So it would be better for you as a family to give that child to the state and let the state take care of the child in a residential kind of orphanage, right? And that will take away that burden from you, and you'll be able to live your utopian, Soviet lifestyle. And
Right.
so that was done for years and years. And then that stayed in place because they were doing it that way for so long, stayed in place even after communism fell. It was still quite acceptable for some people to give their disabled children just because of the economic. And it's tough for any family, with a child like that. But as many families will tell you, the love that comes from those children and through those children to the parents like greatly outweigh the costs of that.
Now, one other thing I want to touch base with while we're talking about this stuff is I've been to Africa. I've been all over the world. Never have I been to a place like Boogly Oogly. Can you tell the people a little bit about that place? Because I don't even know how it got found.
It's also because of the children being abandoned to these, orphanages for disabled children. Well, sooner or later, those children without arms, without legs, without, with deformed bodies, they end up becoming adults, right? And so we didn't know exactly, like we knew that they were sent to different institutions, but and every different institution where they're sent is different. So we heard about this one outside of Creva Rogue, and the first time I went there, again, I wasn't prepared for what I was about to see, and they had this massive cage behind the building, like a literal cage where they had men in the mud and open, like no roof on it, in the rain or the whatever.
It was like you'd put animals in.
Oh, and then in the middle of the cage, where there's 150 men wandering around in this cage, like clawing at each other sometimes, and like is a pail, where they go to the bathroom, and it was horrendous. And so we had taken, like, I had taken a bunch of boxes of bananas that I got because those weren't very common there at that time. And so I went there and I started handing out bananas, and these guys, I realized they'd never had bananas ever in their lives. So they started to eat them without peeling them. And so we had to stop all of a sudden and then show them how to peel the bananas. And it was like devastating. It
was like when I saw them, Ed, it was like they'd never eaten before in their life.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to describe it. Like, it was just like, they're in the cribs and they're in the all over the place.
Yeah.
And they're like deformed and they're trying to shove them in.
Mm-hmm. So you don't know the rest of the story now. And this is interesting because about, I guess it would be about 6 years ago, at that place, we had been praying for a while and we knew something was wrong. we figured it might be the director, like, because the director there has this horrendous, just humongous power to control everything. We found out later that he had been stealing money from, from the place. And so the guys weren't getting even what the budget, even a low budget, but what they were deserving of. And anyway, we were praying, and about 6 years ago, a new director came in, and then we find out he's a born again Christian, like from one of the local churches there in Creve, and just absolutely transformed that place ever since. We've had Paul Burley was there. Can't remember how many years ago that was.
Years ago, he told me.
Yeah, and he did the baptism of over 34 of the men.
Wow.
One day, and we've seen like a genuine revival there. And I was just there I was there again on this trip, and about 130 men came out to the church service that we had there, and they're dancing and praising God. And so their diets have improved, their clothing, the medical care, everything's just dramatically improved since then. Yeah.
So good to hear that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's a little bit about Ukraine and the things that are happening. They're how many people have you given groceries to during the war?
So over 200,000 families now, plus, through Gleaners, there's an organization that gives us these single service meals, over 2 million meals we've given out as well to individuals. Yeah.
God bless you for all your hard work there. So tell us about McJoyful Christmas. We're raising money today and this past week for the help the orphans.
First of all, I just really genuinely want to thank you, because Greg, you've been doing this with us for a long time, and we have certain people who have just caught on what we're doing and have, just partnered with us, and it means a lot to us, because, most of the people that partner with me are my good friends, and people who know us and have been over there with us, have seen these kids. And so I was there, I guess, about 20 years ago, maybe 22 years ago, the first time. They didn't celebrate Christmas on December 25th back then. They celebrated on January 7th. And so December 25th was coming up, and I'm over there, and, you can't even notice that it's even a special day.
Another day right over there.
Yeah, just another day. And I was feeling a little down because of that. I'm thinking, like, and I usually talk to God directly, like, God, why is this so depressing here? Why are these people, why wouldn't they celebrate Christmas? And so I heard God say, what would you be doing in Canada if it was Christmas, in Canada? And so I was like, well, I guess I'd be going to dinner with my family, or, something like that. And he's like, who's your family? And I said, well, the orphan kids. And he said, why don't you take them for dinner? And I suddenly got this idea. Well, they had just opened up McDonald's restaurants back then. And I was just like, that would be an idea, to take some kids to McDonald's. And because, they would never get to go there otherwise. And McDonald's in Ukraine, in the places where we were working, is the elite place to eat. People would get all dressed up in evening gowns and stuff like that. And so the first year we took 24, I think, something like that, kids to McDonald's. And they were just so excited. They were shaking in their seats when we took them in. They had no idea what was coming. And we ended up doing a, kind of like a little skit there right in the restaurant about the birth of Jesus, and they got their Happy Meals. They were just like ecstatic. And the kids ended up taking the cups, they put it in the little box, and the wrappers, the little toy, and they even folded up the little paper placemat on the tray, to take with them. And so, I don't know, I just knew right away we had stumbled on something. And everything that we would say to them, like when we were with them, we knew that they would remember that all year long, just because they would never forget that moment when they were there. And so we knew it would have a big impact on them. And I just realized right away that we had just come into something that God had planned. It's amazing. Like, every once in a while in your life, you come into something and you realize, like, wow, God had this planned all along. Like Jesus said, I can do nothing unless my Father, like, is already doing it. I can only do what he's doing. And you just come into this and you realize right away. And God spoke to me shortly after that, and he said the word 100,000. And I wasn't sure exactly what he meant. Like, was it, and then I suddenly realized he was talking about 100,000 children.
Wow.
We've been at it for 22 years, and we're just over 70,000 children now that have been blessed through this. The outpouring of people, the generosity, people like yourself, Greg, that have gotten involved with this, like, seriously, it's mind-boggling even to us. And everyone in Ukraine, like, they get so excited about it, to take kids to McDonald's. Like, it's such a big deal over there.
Like going the keg here, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Crisp or something,
Yeah. Yeah. And those kids would never get to go there. And we're right inside the McDonald's restaurant doing this presentation of Jesus and his birth. And we'll have Mary there and the baby and Joseph there. And then they'll say, and then the three guys came, the three guys from the East. And then in will walk Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, and Goofy in costumes, and then they'll be like, what? No, not them. And then they'll run out, and then the three wise men will come in. I mean, I'm telling you, it's an amazing show they put on. And everybody that's there in the restaurant, like, they have no choice. They have to watch it. And we get people come up to us. And I had a guy come up to me a while ago there, and he said, what are you guys doing here? Like, what is this? And I said, well, we're just blessing these orphan kids from the orphanage. And he says, can I buy them all ice cream? Like, what can I do? And anyway, the guy ended up getting involved with us. And just an amazing way to bless these children and show, kindness and love in their culture. And the people that are involved with us are just, the churches, they get right into it. And I think they get more excited than I do, just because they know what it means to those kids.
Sure. Yeah. And the great thing is you have teams on the ground all across Ukraine that are doing it. Not just one city, right? It's all.
It's all across Ukraine. Yeah. And so, $10, like, if you think about it, $10 at Christmas time, we can pay for the transportation, for the kids to the McDonald's and back. We can pay for the Happy Meal. We give each child vitamins. They get the toy with it. They also do a craft, that our team provides as well. And they get a full presentation of why we celebrate Jesus's birthday to this day. Like, why 2,000 years later, we're still celebrating his birthday, and being able to explain to the kids who he is. And we had, I guess it was about 4 years ago, we had like a great outpouring during the event, and we had over 1,000 children gave their lives to Jesus right in the McDonald's restaurant, So just amazing things. We had, I'll never forget a couple of the kids. So after one of the things, they came up to me and they said they wanted to talk to me. And I thought, oh boy, they want to thank me, as if I'm doing all this, and because I'm ready to tell them, it's not me. These are people from all over Canada and United States who have given money for, you to do this. But they said to me, we just wanted to tell you that me and my friend, we've been praying together. Like, they had been praying together for months.
And how old were they?
These kids would have been like 9 years old, and they had been praying together, her and her friend, for months, that God would somehow allow them to go to McDonald's, just to go to McDonald's. And so they wanted to tell me, because when we contacted their orphanage and told them we were going to take them, they wanted to tell me that, God had answered their prayers. And yeah, so just constantly things like that happening that kind of like signposts along the way that let us know that, you know, we're just doing exactly what God wants us to do.
Yeah. So Ed, right now, this year on the ground so far, how many have you already taken?
On the ground, we just got started. We usually start like December 25th.
Yeah, right.
But this year we started a little bit earlier in
Because of the change.
Poltava.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we're up to about, I think around 450 kids so far, something like that.
But you have like 3,000 sponsored already, right?
Over 3,700 now. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
And that's
people.
like, seriously, it's
go.
no advertising, no,
Just out of word of mouth.
yeah. And yeah, just friends of, loads of love, friends of Ed, you know, and people like yourself, Greg, that come along, and it really is just genuinely a God thing.
I was saying the other day, I think this is the 6th year I've been involved in this now. And
I figured so. Yeah, probably something like that. Yeah.
It's it blesses my heart more than it blesses other people's because I've seen it. I've been there with those kids.
Yeah. And you have to see it. I think, you know, I mean, but it is
where God forgot. I've been to Boogaloo. I've been to those places there with you.
Yeah.
And to see the transformation in these people.
Yeah.
It's
yeah. It's hard to, you know, to explain to people like $10, right? I mean, like you're gonna, like, it's unbelievable how that's gonna bless.
Lisa's doing 7 right now. She's already done 30, Ed, so she's gonna be 37 now.
There you go.
And
there you go.
So come on, people, I want you to go to this website and we're going to send it all into Ed. And listen, every dollar that comes in goes to Ed. We don't keep anything administratively, and he gets it all to Ukraine. It all goes there.
Yeah, we're very fortunate. You know, that's something I haven't mentioned. We have a secondhand store in Chatham.
Yeah, tell that.
The secondhand store makes money every month, and so it completely covers our administrative costs. And so, like I tell people, you give $100 to Pastor Vadim or to the church in Poltava or McJoyful, like 100% goes right there. And the way the banks are set up and working now, you know, the percentages are so small that, again, the administrative costs are all covered. And we can just bless people. There's nothing better than that, to be able to, you know, most people I tell that, you know, if they'll say, hey, I want to give $100 to this pastor, and I'll say, yeah, okay, I'll give him $100. Well, don't you have to take something off for that? And they're like, no, it's all covered. And
I know people can hardly believe it.
Yeah, that's hard to believe. Yeah,
take 10 or 20% or whatever, 7% or 9%.
Yeah.
And it's incredible. I mean, listen, I haven't been to Ukraine since 2019. It's breaking my heart. I want to get back so bad.
Yeah.
But I'm just physically not able to do the trip the way you have to do it right now.
It's pretty grueling right now. Like we spend 3 full days just getting one way, you know. And it's not just 3 days, like a little bit. It's like 3 grueling days with overnight flights and overnight train rides and full day car rides, and like just because you can't fly into Ukraine, right? So we have to fly into Warsaw. Right. And then, but, you know, as you can imagine, for me, just completely necessary and worthwhile right now. Yeah.
Well, and the thing is, you know, many people on here, they can't go, but they can sow.
Yeah.
And I mean, I haven't been able to go, but this year alone, Ed, you know, as my witness, we've helped that church in Poltava. We bought them chairs so they could. They doubled their chairs.
Yeah.
We gave them other money to do other things with.
Yeah.
And the thing is, when we give to Ukraine people, you got to understand, we always go through loads of love. We always go through Ed.
Yeah.
And Ed distributes it to the people because we're in relationship with Ed, and we met these people through Ed.
Yeah.
And so relationship is the most important thing.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Like, and I'll say it again, like, we're so fortunate to have people on the ground in Ukraine that we can trust, like that I would trust with my life. And many people, like we've all heard about the corruption in Ukraine and those countries over there, some of them, like, and to have that for us, that's like gold, and I'll very often hear from other organizations and other people about difficulties, struggles they've had with, things disappearing. And yeah, we've been very fortunate. God has blessed us. And I think having the 27 years relationships there, we've obviously gotten to know who we can really trust, and just the way everything's set up, the way the banks are working. I've been surprised that, through the war, the banks are still going. I remember early on in the war when the soldiers were just outside of Kiev and destroying Irpin and Bucha and all those cities. And all of a sudden the bank, like my bank app shut down and I couldn't get the money through that I was trying to send. And I called my bank manager and I'm literally talking to her on the phone. I can see her on the phone talking with her. And I'm like, Nadia, you're in your office? And she says, yeah, I'm in my office. And there's a war right outside. I said, I told her what was happening. She said, Ed, and literally, like, you could see tears welling up in her eyes. And she said, I just know how important it is to people right now that this money gets through. And I'm telling you, the people there, not all of them, but most of them, just resilient, unbelievable strength through this really difficult time. And I'm thinking, Greg, you know these people even before the war, but like this war has made them some of the toughest people on earth right now. And if there was ever any kind of like huge worldwide economic disaster or something like that some people predict, and I just want to be in Ukraine, because for them, be nothing.
Yeah.
It'd be nothing.
Right?
Big deal. Like
life is so good.
Yeah. We'll just, they would just turn the sod over on their lawns and plant potatoes, and
and they got the best vegetables in the world, don't they? Because they got the best soil in the world.
Yeah. But they're just tough, and we can learn something. There's a strength, I think, kind of coming through the churches right now. Yeah. And it's this kind of like Pastor Pasha was telling me a while ago, what they've really begun to realize is that they have today. That's what we have. We have today. Yeah. And I'm just going to do everything I can today. And with tears in his eyes, he says, I got today. That's what I got. And I'm just going to do everything I can today. And there's a strength there that we can, benefit from, that kind of experience like they're having. So, yeah, they're inspiring guys to me, and gals. Yeah.
Well, we need to do our part in North America. And so you have an opportunity today. I want you to go to this website today, myeim.org. And my wife and I we're at 114. My wife and I will sponsor 10. Our ministry, EIM, will sponsor 10. So now we're at 134. We need to get this to 150 by the time I send this money to Ed. So come on, in Jesus' name. We only need another 16 sponsored at $10 a person. I believe we can do it on this broadcast even. And so I want you to go to this website and sow, because I would never ask you to do something I wouldn't do myself. We've always sowed into this.
Yeah.
Because we believe in what's happening, and we believe in it's a move of God. Like Ukraine is in revival, Ed. I mean, before this, and now since then, God's done so much more. So yeah. So we want to be part of it.
Yeah, it's acts. Like I've heard how does, like, I was walking out of the church a while ago here in Canada, and there were these three wonderful ladies walking into the church, and they said, Ed, they noticed me, and they said, we're coming into the church to pray for revival in Canada. And I said, oh, that's great. I said, we have revival in Ukraine
Yeah.
because of the war, you know. And the one lady, she looked at me, she said, "Well, maybe we should be careful what we pray for."
Yeah. Yeah.
And I said, no, it's okay, because it's not the war that created the revival. The war created the situation, but love created the revival. And just like I was saying before, like 85% of the help for people coming through the church, that's what's created the revival. And people seeing that the church is a real, genuine answer to their needs, to hope, to real love in the community and assistance. And that's what has caused people to just flood into the churches. And because if it was just the war, well, then it would have flooded in when the war started, and then it'd be finishing as the war has cooled down in various regions. But what we've seen is that the revival is continuing. And so that's a sign that it really is the love and the reaction of the people that's created the revival.
Yeah. And so we're gonna give by the end of the weekend. We'll get it to edit the first of the week, and then next week, if more come in, we'll just keep forwarding that money to him.
Yeah.
And this people will be watching this broadcast. We came on 2 hours early today, so they didn't see it, so they may want to give. So keep sending my EIM, and we'll get it to Ed.
Okay. And the program goes on, like we go right until January 10th.
Yeah.
So that's why, just so people know, that's why we can.
That's why I started. Well, I started late because I was in Africa, but I knew it went into January. So So I mean, she's believing for 600 kids to be sponsored for us. I mean, she's got faith for it. She's like, come on, keep going, people. And, so we're at 134. Listen, do we have 16 people that can, or just one person? You can sponsor $160 right here and get it to 150. And we want to do it. We want to thank Ed for being on today with us. Powerful, powerful, powerful. Love you so much, Ed. Give our love to the crew there. I remember when we went to Kiev one time, and your kids were younger, and Amy wanted to go to McDonald's so bad. Remember we had McDonald's downtown Kiev, and I was telling yesterday, Ed, my daughter who's 26 now, she's getting married. My oldest daughter, married in August, and in her grade 12 year of high school, she went to McDonald's every day.
Every day.
it's like nothing's stopping her. She's just like, every day. And to this day, my girls, they all love McDonald's still.
Yeah.
Look, I got a McDonald's drink right here in my hand. Every day I go to McDonald's and get a drink. Spend $2 on an iced tea.
I don't know if you remember, but I wonder, like Amy, when she was little, she used to, if we were in the car and we were driving along, she would see the big M and she would go, Magona.
She was ready, eh?
Magona. We'd just hear this yell from the back seat.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being on with us today. Merry Christmas to you, and thank you for all the work you're doing.
My pleasure, Greg. Thank you. Like I said, it's friendships, relationships that keep the move of God going around the world. It really is.
Yeah.
And so I thank you sincerely as a friend just for being committed to this.
Okay. Thank you so much. Bless you. Talk to you soon. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Adventure. Ed Dixon, and it's an adventure every time we go. Ed and Natasha doing a great job, and their family in Ukraine, and we're so thankful for what God is doing through them. And so we want you to go today. We've got 134 orphans sponsored already. And by the end of the day, even if we could have 16, just to say we have 150 sponsored by the end of today. So maybe you're on here, maybe you're watching this broadcast later, and because we're on a little bit earlier. And if you can go to that website, myeim.org, and give. And we're gonna do whatever we can to be a blessing here. And $10 makes a difference. So if you can sow $10, if you can sow, I don't know what you want to sow today, but you can do something and be a blessing. And I know God's going to use it. God will multiply it. and God's going to do amazing things through you, through me, because we're willing and we're ready to see what God wants to do. And so please be part of it. Go to myeim.org. We're at 134 sponsored, and we need you to keep sowing, keep giving. And tomorrow there will be no broadcast. I got to go fly right now to Toronto. That's why we went on early. I got to speak at a funeral tomorrow in Ontario, so we got to fly there tonight. And then we'll be on Sunday afternoon. We'll be back. And Pastor B will be on from Philippines. He'll be leading in worship. And it'll be a powerful time of worship together as we go into the Christmas season. So that will be on Sunday afternoon. And pray that you can join us, be a blessing. And so please go to myeim.org. So it's only $10 to support an orphan. Maybe you can support one. Maybe you can support 100. Maybe you can support. Listen, there's people that can support 100, 200, 300, 400, 500 kids. I mean, it's not hard. You're making a difference where it matters most. So please be a blessing. Please do what you do. Thank you, Lise, for blessing today. And we're going to sow, like I said, we're going to sow for 10, and our ministry is going to sow for 10. And so we're glad for 29 sponsorships so far today, even on the broadcast. And God's going to do great and mighty things, and he's going to use you and I. So thank you. Please share this out so people can watch it. I know we were on a little earlier, so some of our regular viewers aren't on yet because they're just waking up somewhere in the world. And but they can make a difference. So if you're watching this on the rerun, please just be a blessing, share it, sow it, and make a difference. So God bless you, and may God continue to ignite you by the power of his Spirit. So long.